Hello, everyone. Welcome back to REIMAGINE 2021 version 8. We're back with another conference, and this time we're exploring really the future of digital ownership. So kind of have an NFT focused event. And I'm Roshan Mirajkar, one of your hosts for this event. And thank you to Tellor for supporting this event. And I'm really excited to bring you guys something new here today. We're going to be doing a fun panel style discussion. So I'm joined here today by Nick Fett, who's the CTO at Tellor. I'm also joined here by Steve Derezinski, who's the CEO of Locally Owned, and as well as Robert Lauko, who's the founder of Liquity protocol. Thank you all for being here today. Really excited to jump into a lot of interesting topics. Just real quick, tell us a little bit about, kind of your impact in the space and what you guys are interested in right now.
Yeah, I guess I can kick it off. So like he said, I'm Nick Fett. I'm the CTO here at Tellor. So Tellor is a decentralized oracle on the Ethereum network. So what we do is we help companies get off-chain data on-chain. So if you need the price of Ethereum, the price of Bitcoin, price of oil, or some other thing, and there's really not an easy way to get that into your smart contract, at least in a trustless manner. And we have a network of miners who perform those actions for you and bring it on chain for you. Yeah, I think that's anything else you would want me to go over, Roshan?
Nope. Steve, you can go ahead now.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me. Good to be here. I'm Steve Derezinski. So Locally Owned is a local currency provider, and the difference between what we do and what a lot of other companies do is we provide templates and governance for communities to run their own local cryptocurrency. We're built on kind of a history of a lot of local paper currencies, and we're really focused on kind of the decentralized aspects of providing that currency to local communities. Both from a governance perspective and from a user experience perspective. And just real quick, I don't know if you've got this topic on kind of how I got to meet Nick and when he was presenting at ETH 2020 or 2021, maybe it was. I guess it was ETH 2020. Yeah.
Yeah, ETH Denver.
ETH Denver. Sorry, yeah, it's ETH Denver. Yeah. Talked about the Chorus protocol that Tellor is implementing, and we got interested in that because that provides a nice base layer of a stable currency for us to kind of build the governance layer on top of. So we can get into more details on that if we want to, but let me leave it at that.
And Robert?
Yeah, hi, thanks for having me. And I'm happy to tell you a bit more about Liquity. So I'm the CEO and founder, and Liquity is a borrowing protocol. And I'm emphasizing the word borrowing because there is no lender. There are only borrowers. In a sense, because we are issuing our own stable coin called the LUSD, which is pegged to the US dollar, obviously. So we are a little bit similar to MakerDAO in that sense, but we have a few differences. We are trying to make borrowing really the central aspect of the system, and also we want to make it as attractive as possible by basically eliminating interest rates and only charging like a very low one-off fee when you take out a loan, and also by making like everything very efficient, like liquidations in particular, so that we can provide a much lower collateralization ratio that you need to maintain as a borrower. So for our borrowers, it's only 110%. So they borrow against Ether, which is our only collateral type. And the whole system is more or less like, or is basically completely governance free. So everything is algorithmically controlled and there is nobody who could change anything. So it's completely immutable and decentralized.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's really exciting to be here today to kind of see real world projects kind of utilizing oracles. And, although you all have, I guess, some different projects, different things you guys are working on, I think one thing you have in common is this concept of decentralization and how important it is for you all. So can you all kind of tell me, like, how important is decentralization to you all when you're, building out your applications?
Yes, I think for Liquity, decentralization is very important on multiple layers, because we are not just focusing on the back end, which normally is in the center of people's mind if one speaks of decentralization. So it's not just about creating something which cannot be controlled by any party or any body, but it's what we are also trying to achieve is decentralizing the front end. And that basically boils down to that we are not running our own front end, but we are making it so that third parties have an incentive, like the protocol has enshrined financial incentives, which make it attractive to run a front end, and that provides this kind of censorship resistance as well.
Yeah, and yes, Steve, I don't know if you have any thoughts there. Like, how do you think of decentralization? How important is it to you compared to a lot of other projects that have other priorities?
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite questions, and I actually teach a blockchain ventures course to a bunch of MBA students. So if you indulge me for a second, I'd love to give you a little more of a background on this stuff. So blockchain technology, when you deploy it, you can kind of parse it into like 14 different technical benefits that can be provided, or even more than that. But for my students, I usually just focus on two. One is like a lower cost of ownership, lower cost of access to customers, and lower cost of security. And then the other one is decentralization. And if I look at the innovation theory behind deploying those technical benefits, the lower cost is known as an incremental innovation, which the innovation theory says the advantage of deploying that technical benefit lies to the incumbent. So one of the things that you'll see in the industry is all the sort of large companies that are already in the space, or already not in the crypto space, but just out in the marketplace, will look at blockchain and say, hey, how can we leverage that lower cost element of what we're doing? So turning to decentralization, that technical benefit is considered what's called an architectural innovation, which means I need to completely upend the structure of my business in order to kind of deploy it. So any incumbent that looks at an architectural innovation, that's extremely disruptive to their business model. So the innovation theory says the advantage goes to the newcomer if you're going to leverage an architectural innovation. So when I see decentralization, I see opportunity for locally owned to kind of deploy in a decentralized manner in other spaces where there may be incumbents that are playing to go completely change the game. So specifically how we like to look at decentralization for community currencies is in the governance. Any community you talk to, if you come in and say, hello, I'm going to deploy a currency and I'm here to help you, the immediate reaction you get is, a little bit of a skeptical eye. So if we come to them and say, we want you to govern and run this community currency, and here are the tools to do it, that's a different conversation. And that's a new conversation we can have because of the decentralized elements of blockchain and the features that we're deploying in all this. So that's really how, that's how we're sort of embedding the decentralized concept into our business model, specifically for a sort of a value proposition for the end customer and how they perceive it. So we love it.
Yeah, got it. So decentralization is certainly very important. And, Nick, sort of the work that you guys are doing, how do you think this is going to impact the business world? Like, who's sort of going to get left out? And yeah, what's sort of the future impact of even governance for a lot of these legacy companies that have all the power?
Yeah, that's like a ginormous question, I think. You can, whenever you're talking like with decentralization and what's the importance of, say, what Robert or Steve is doing, it's, you look at like how values can sort of be captured within these systems. So, whenever Bitcoin was originally launched, it had sort of these libertarian ideals about, we're going to move away from the Federal Reserve that's printing too much money or something like that. And It's really just a completely different mindset as far as like now you're launching something that nobody can stop, and that's really important because the reason that you want it to be nobody can stop it is because you're probably disrupting somebody who's going to be pissed about you launching it. So you want to make sure that you're not kind of playing by the same rules that they are. You know, if you're trying to go through the traditional legal system or something like that, you're going to have a lot of time. So if you look at you know, kind of back to your question, I guess specifically, like where will decentralization sort of play out? And I think there's a few other examples of things that have done it. You know, like I always like to point back to, you know, like Napster, the early days of, you know, with music industry. And whenever decentralization came about, like it was these peer-to-peer software sharing and things like that. And it didn't necessarily, you know, like we don't pirate music anymore. At least I don't. You know, I used to, but nowadays, like everyone just streams. But I think the decentralization aspect really just put a limit almost on the profit and the amount of rent that the centralized players could extract because you had these decentralized options. And I think that's really where we're going to see a lot of these financial protocols really move. It's, you know, like if you are a central protocol, like there's a lot of reasons it's probably going to be cheaper. It's probably going to be faster to use a centralized protocol. It's just the way it is. And but nowadays, like if you start to extract too much rent from the system, people are going to go use DeFi, go use Ethereum, and it sort of sets a cap on the amount of sort of extraction that you can pull. And that's kind of the world that we were trying to build. And that's why, you know, we saw a big piece that was missing was the Oracle piece that was actually censorship resistant. So that's kind of the problem we're tackling to make this bigger picture a reality.
Yeah, and definitely, you know, transactions, how fast the finality of transactions is definitely important. But I think, you know, what's been sort of a new discussion in the past couple of months is this idea of governance, right, and actual participation. So Steve and Robert, how do you guys sort of see governance within your protocols, and what's the current state of governance? Like, are you guys actually happy with a lot of the implementations out there, or, you know, do you guys have some new ideas of how you'd like to see things?
Yeah, so I guess in our case, so I see governance as something which is in theory very nice and like a goal that you should strive for, but in practice it has a lot of problems. And that's why we opted for this kind of radical governance reduced or even governance eliminated approach for our protocol, because it's really one of the most extreme protocols out there in that respect. So I think there are a couple of points here. So first of all, the question is, what do you want to govern? I think there are questions or topics that lend themselves more naturally to governance. Most of the time, those are questions that are not time sensitive. So you have like enough time to prepare and like put out a proposal and let people discuss like this proposal before voting. Then there are like other questions that are just maybe a bit too urgent when they come up, like be it some bug that you need to, or some issue that you need to find a fix like as fast as possible. So then a governance mechanism may fail because it's just too slow to react, or even like changing an interest rate or some protocol parameter can be, yeah, time sensitive. So that's one issue which I see, which makes it difficult, at least to some extent, and for some like aspects that you want to govern. And the other is just like the turnout or participation, which is just very low. I mean, there are some interesting, I think, like governance ideas. There's one from Definity, this like where you can follow other people's votes, or like that somehow makes it easier for you to cast your vote, so you don't need to spend too much time, because I think that's also a difficult area, like to capture people's time and mind, because yeah, I mean, there are so many projects out there, and if they all come with their own governance, I mean, people are lazy and they may not, yeah, like spend enough time to even think through all the possibilities. So I just see a number of practical issues there. That's why we ended up going for this radical approach of not having a governance mechanism at all.
And Robert?
That was me.
No,
Yeah,
sorry.
well, I mean, I can.
Steve.
Go for it, Steve.
Yeah, so governance is a can you guys hear me? Yeah. So governance is a big deal for us. Specifically kind of tying on the decentralization concept where we're handing over control to the community. And the paradigm that the community has is kind of a board of governors, right? Sort of like, a group of 10 people that are going to take votes. This is under the crypto pre-blockchain world. Any kind of community run organization is going to have some, group of leaders. Thinking about how we run that governance kind of on chain, we actually are deploying, we actually just finished moving some of the Chorus Anthem stuff into an Aragon DAO app. So if you spin up a DAO, you can actually use the Chorus features and put an actual community currency into your DAO as part of the governance of that. And that's a critical sort of building block to kind of what we're trying to build. Our next phase is going to be having mobile, payment back and forth to kind of buy in, to be able to purchase products with the currency. But the actual governance feature of it and the fact that it's decentralized means that we can deploy it within a community and kind of get it started. And the way I like to think about it is like a Genesis block. When you're first launching a community currency, you want to have a group of very strongly interested individuals that will hopefully engage and do a lot of voting. But you can see how as ownership of the governing token evolves, more and more people will be involved in it. And I'm actually looking at more of a deployment around kind of the, delegation model, where you have kind of representatives that are actually doing the voting, and you can delegate your tokens to kind of people that you agree with, and they can kind of handle the vote. So that's kind of how I see the governance evolving for a community currency. But the potential to kind of grow it and to have everybody involved, I think is a really important point, and is a really kind of a strong differentiator for comparison to a lot of other community currencies where they're sort of controlled by a few central actors, and they may grow and do well. But if you have kind of the robustness of a whole community of people that are engaged and talking about how to make it better and how to improve it, that kind of creates a structure that can grow and evolve over time and kind of move as the community moves. I am certainly very aware of the comments that Robert made around, you have disengagement and people just, you come up with a vote and nobody shows up, so that 3 people who vote on it actually pass the proposal, and bad things can happen. So there's certainly some challenges there. We are not doing a lot of innovation in that space, but certainly looking to the other projects out there that are doing a lot of work around delegation and around, I think the radical concepts that you mentioned, Robert, are certainly interesting that we're following along as well. So.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree with a lot of things you guys are saying around like participation, and in some cases it's very low. And I think the flip side of that is crypto economic incentives. So, what do you all think, what's a successful system, like a crypto economic system? Like, what are some examples that you guys think of applications, or even in your own protocols? Like, how do we incentivize people to participate more, and what would you guys like to see in the future?
Yeah, I mean, if I can jump in, I think, with Robert, like, I think there's always governance in it, like whether or not you formally specify governance, like even with Uniswap, for instance, like Uniswap has like no governance, similar to say like a Liquity, but it's like the ultimate governance is just in the liquidity providers. So you're basically just giving them the say of the ownership of the protocol, and they can kind of fork it and do what they want with it. That might be a better, if those are the people that you want to have control of your system, that's good. And I think, same with like in a Bitcoin where you have no specification of governance whatsoever. There is governance, but it sort of leans towards never changing. Maybe that's good. So some people in the Bitcoin community would disagree that that's good. So, I think it's always like tough trying to find the balance, like with, like say in kind of the competing interests, because like, saying like to put it simply, like in the Bitcoin system, you have like the holders, you have the people actually sending transactions, you have the people who are miners, and it's sort of a balance of power. And, like I think a lot of times on the Ethereum community, whenever you have, like what are the incentives whenever people are voting and everything, and most of the time it's just pure token holder governance. So like, obviously you get like monetary policies that just want number go up for the holding of the token. And it's almost a lot of times just really bad for the protocol in general. Like it becomes completely unusable, but number goes up. And so you want to kind of try and find those balances, and I'd say no one's really found it. As far as some things with like good crypto economic incentives, I think whenever you have good crypto economic incentives, it's whenever you find those right balances in the system. So whenever you're paying people to provide security for your protocol, but they're also not able to game the system in such a way that they're not acting in the benefit of everyone else in the system, and that's really what you're trying to find. And like with Tellor, we print tokens and give them to people who are providing off-chain data, and they behave because they're staked and they get this reward, and they want to make sure that everything works out. And they're obviously not necessarily the same financially interested individuals as, say, like somebody who is just holding our token on an exchange, but that's okay. You hope that the incentives in the system work out, that it's in everybody's best interest to make this thing work. And that's really the balance you're trying to find. So
I guess that's a good point. I mean, it's really about also like finding the balance between different or various user groups. I mean, that's, I think, also another issue I see with current like approaches to governance, because normally, or most of the projects have like some extra governance token, but those projects may have a lot of different use cases, but only the holders of the governance token have a right to vote, and they could try to extract just too much revenue from all the others, or like the incentives may not be aligned necessarily. So I think that's also another issue I see. So I haven't really seen that many projects that have different, like which give voting rights, not just to some token holder, but to various actors in the system. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's almost just like limited on like, when will the other actors in the system fork and go away if there's bad token holder governance? And that's like such a, that's like a threshold that you don't want to have, It's like, when will we revolt against rich people? So rich people will only behave until we want to burn them or something. So it's never work.
Do you think that like auto-regulates itself so people wouldn't try to push the boundaries too hard? But I mean, there's also a tragedy of the commons. I mean, as long as you're only like you're not a whale and your vote is not pivotal for the outcome, I mean, why would you even care that much about the outcome? So that's also something I see. It's difficult.
But is it, I'm always questioned by that, because like, like you want everyone to say things, but like, let's say, there is a governance proposal as far as like, even in the US, like this person's going to become president. If we all agree with it, like, should we have to vote on it or say anything? Like if one person votes and we all sort of agree and let him vote, like, shouldn't we all just save our time and not vote? And maybe maybe we all just agree with the founding team for things. So I think like low participation isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's like low participation that leads to bad things is a bad thing. So
I think the challenge is you want to know how people think, right? If they don't speak up, you don't know what the will of the people is, right? So you got to kind of hold them. So even if they like there's a lot of stuff with snapshot voting, right? On like off-chain voting, which is just a signaling vote, but that's important to kind of hear like what people think, right? And it's a cheap way it's a free way, right, to sort of signal what's going on. For our community currency, there'll be two pockets of money. One is a payment percentage. There'll be a fee that'll be accumulated in a beneficiary wallet, and then there's also an inflation component. So the use of those pools of money over time will be decided on by the governance by a vote. So hopefully where there's real money, there'll be incentive for people to want to vote and kind of come to the table to decide where that funding is going to go to kind of to hopefully have real impact in their local communities. So, and this kind of actually gets to a conversation I was having the other day with how do you measure philanthropic impact, right? Like if we all come from the crypto and the financial world, the bottom line is the bottom line, and we can measure impact easily that way, right? ROI. But when you go out for a vote and you ask the community to vote, they might have some element of impact in mind that could be more important to them, and you don't necessarily know until you get them to kind of actually weigh in on it. Which is why I really want to go mobile first in our deployment of stuff. So obviously payment stuff is going to be important, but the phase after this next, person to person mobile is getting people to vote with their phones and not vote, behind their laptops. So that's going to be important to just get deployment. I mean, if you can just get a quick notification to say like, hey, this proposal is out there, you need to vote on it, please tell us your opinion, and it costs you nothing other than saying I hate it, I love it, and hopefully we'll get a lot more engagement in that, especially in today's day and age when people can just click on stuff all the time and they're constantly getting bombarded with ads about think this way and feel that way. So hopefully we'll get a lot more engagement in that with that.
Yeah,
process.
but I think there's like a pro and con there, like that's like an argument they're having with like voting laws now in the US. Like, is making it super easy to vote for people, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Like, I don't know if it's necessarily as cut and dry as it would, like if every single person got a text that like, what do you think of this law? Like you would probably get a whole bunch of noise of people who don't care and don't have any information on it. So
well, you could make that an option though. You could say, I love it, I hate it, I don't care. I don't know anything about it, right? Like I don't want to be engaged, right? Like I would much rather hear from people than just have a bunch of, people that are like zombies walking around, and they have no opinion on anything.
But I mean, I live in Switzerland and we have like at least like between 5 and 10 popular votes a year on like many different topics. And it's interesting to see, I mean, it has some similarities probably to blockchain votes as well. I mean, if people put out like proposals, because basically everyone can, or everyone, like a certain number of people, inhabitants can propose something, like even change the constitution. And then most of those ideas, when they first get proposed, they are very popular and the polls show like high support. But then over time, as people start discussing it, like experts chime in, and then it turns out, oh, yeah, maybe the intentions are good, but it costs a lot of money, or yeah, it somehow doesn't work out in practice. And then you see how a support rate of, let's say, 70% shrinks to 30%. And that's like the fate of most of those popular votes that are like proposed by the inhabitant, like the population of Switzerland. And that's interesting to see because like maybe at first sight, it would be, yeah, oh, that's really great. I want to be I'm in, but then it turns out, oh yeah, there are some negative effects, and so.
I think that was like one of the EIPs where they were doing like and like basically somebody proposed it and it was like almost getting implemented, and then like everyone looked at it and was like, wait a minute, this is a bad idea, guys, let's not do this. And it was like, well, it was just about to be implemented, but nobody even looked at the EIP until like it was almost too late, but they stopped it. So it was,
yeah, so like kind of going off of that, what do you guys think is the best way to handle like conflicts and upgrades within your protocols or even in the industry? Like, should everything be done through governance, or are there other aspects like developers outside of that?
Well, I know for us, like, like Robert's protocol is like, they use Tellor and they're not upgradable, but we are upgradable. And the reason that we wanted to be upgradable is so that way protocols like Robert's can be non-upgradable. And, like, because like we have had to upgrade our system a few times because, for instance, like whenever we launched this thing 2 years ago, there was like gas prices were like 1 Gwei, and like we sort of had to shift our system whenever you got into a 200 Gwei world with $3,000 Ethereum. So it just, some of the things didn't necessarily make sense, and it was good that we built in that flexibility. But so I think it depends like how things work, because even like some pieces are upgradability is always dangerous, but then if you want usage, like sometimes it's nice to have some upgradability. Same with like if Uniswap is, people have talked like if you wanted to use Uniswap as an Oracle, well, they're just changing everything now. So you're gonna have to switch your Oracle address, which is an upgrade, being able to switch your Oracle address. So there's like pros and cons to both, and you really just want it. I think it kind of like we were saying before, it comes down to balance, is like making sure that the users have the right say in whenever you're upgrading, and that it sort of is very well known what's going to happen, and that this is how it's going to work. So
I guess this is also interesting. I mean, for us that, I mean, systems like Tellor can actually accommodate immutable protocols by being upgradable. And I think that that's a bit different, like having like one DApp that's upgradable then, and just relying on some data feed provider that's upgradable. I think there's a difference there because, I mean, in our case, like there is kind of a separation of concerns or a separation of interests between the two. So it can be a good thing if it's not like some governance or some admin body that could change or replace, let's say, the Oracle from a system, but it's like a third party's application that has this governance, because you may not like only weigh in the interests or like, yeah, the interests of Liquity as one of the consumers, but when you change or upgrade your Oracle system, you would probably think of the whole ecosystem, like all your consumers, and that may be a good thing because it's not just like tailored to one specific consumer. So I guess this, yeah, lines well.
Yeah, no, it's tough, and I mean that's what I'm guessing. Like with Ethereum 2.0 will eventually launch, and like I'm just guessing we're all going to have to upgrade, like, or we'll all want to upgrade. So everything's going to change, and hopefully that goes smoothly. But it's going to be one of those things where I bet there's going to be a lot of turmoil and a lot of token addresses changing and things like that. Just because now you'll be able to do new, better things.
So I don't have any specific comments on that aspect, but I will just say that one of the things that I love about this entire space is that just about everything is upgradable and is evolving and changing and converting. So if you don't like something, fork and go. Like, don't complain about it, do something about it, right? I mean, that's just a great kind of ethos that sort of permeates the entire sector, and hopefully it will spill out into the rest of the world, right? Like, we're just going to keep innovating and making it better and making it better and making it better for your community or for a different community, right? Like, we should be able to kind of keep going with this stuff and make sure that it fits people's needs, right? So I love it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we talked a lot about governance, kind of switching over a bit. I think a lot of people, something that they don't understand in the industry is they're kind of very skeptical about the security or like the fallback, the risk. So what's your message to these people on like, what should they be relying on as far as the fallback systems, just in our entire space, like all the things we're talking about today, decentralization, whether it's oracles or simply interacting with each other?
I don't know necessarily what the question was, but I think because like I know a fallback is a kind of function in Ethereum, but like whenever it comes to just building robust systems and security, like you really just have to take things slow. In a lot of ways, like we tell people, like whenever, like Liquity is a good example of somebody, they have one oracle and then they have another oracle, and that way if one fails, the other one can sort of pick up, and you always have to assume that things are going to fail, even in like we tell people, like there might be some miners that centralize and try and censor your protocol and calls. Like you have to make sure that your protocol can withstand that. And some of the best things like we found is just honestly the best sort of security in the space is just being launched for a little bit of time. If you're like the most secure protocol, I would say is one that's been launched for 2 years without needing significant upgrades or something like that, and then it goes from there. Like if you have money in it and it's been launched for a time, that's how you sort of figure out security in the space.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, no bug bounty program can be as large as your TVL or like whatever is at risk in your protocol, at least normally. And that's what also makes it really difficult. Also, like just having your code audited is not a guarantee either. I mean, it's just like one aspect which is important, but it doesn't give you like 100% certainty that there are no issues and no bugs or anything that could lead to some loss of assets. So yeah, I mean, I guess what's very important as well is just taking the time to develop and review your own code, test it, and just write hundreds or thousands of unit tests and fuzzing and all like the tests that you can do either automatically or manually. I think that's what really makes it like make your code at least trustworthy, even though, I mean, it's not a guarantee for bug freeness either. But at least, I mean, the more time you spend, I guess also, maybe it's fine if your code has some kind of hidden bugs if nobody finds them. And they are not as relevant that they would like just become relevant by themselves because they could only be exploited, but nobody knows how or even finds the exploit. So yeah, I think there are multiple aspects to it, but it's generally a hard question.
Yeah, it is a good question, Roshan, and you know, thinking of community currencies, right, and thinking about people, you know, buying and selling things. The fallback position for us is going to be some kind of like insurance against losses or things like that. But I wanted to make one comment on a phrase that gets tossed around in the world of crypto a lot that kind of is a challenging thing to describe, which is the phrase trustlessness, right? So it's like this is trustless, and I always go back to the comment of, well, if it's trustless, then give me $10,000, you know, like. But it really what it is you're shifting the trust from a central party into the crypto and into the protocols, right? So there is a level of trust, but you have to trust kind of the math and trust the code that your stuff is going to work. And communicating that to sort of general community players is a bit of a challenge. And a lot of times what we look at is kind of the length of time, as Nick pointed out, of how long something has been out there as kind of a good comfort factor, if you will. But we are looking at providing some level of sort of traditional insurance against kind of losses. Hopefully, with the deployment of a local community currency, it will be kind of a money generator for the community, right? As they use it, they will generate more money. So they will be extracting money out of it and kind of putting it to work in their community. And it won't be kind of like a gigantic, you know, savings pot that turns into a huge honeypot for some hacker to try and go after and steal. Like, I mean, that's sort of the goal is if you have an increased velocity of money in your community where you're actually, you know, creating more money, creating more value and getting it out and getting it to work a lot faster than any other financial system, that's actually better for the community and frankly safer as well. So it's a good question and something that we've thought a little bit about, but clearly we're going to have to think a lot more about. Nobody you can't have mattress money with cryptocurrency, right? You can't take a bunch of cash out and shove it under your mattress, right? You have to figure out some other way. I guess turning it into digital gold maybe, but then where do you shove your ledger wallet, I guess, under your mattress?
Well, I mean, I miss like the old days, like we've almost lost a lot of forgiveness in the space. Like, you know, with the old DAO hack, you know, there was a big bug, but then we reverted it out. The systems were new, and you know, like I think like early on, like I think almost protocols building in, like, you know, Ethereum had the ability to do that early on, and I wish we almost had a little bit more of that community feel earlier on, like we're like, hey guys, we're launching this protocol for 6 months, but like if you hack our system and do it, like we're gonna just fork and take it back. So like, thank you for bug bounty, you know, and just have like a little bit more of the testing feel to it. But I know that like Ethereum's too big to do that nowadays, but hopefully I think once we start to move into more community chains or something like that, maybe we'll get back to it a little bit.
Yeah, and just sort of going off on the security topic, thank you guys for all covering that. Trying to explore, you know, how a lot of people, they don't necessarily understand the security risks, or they don't understand how a lot of these protocols are designed. So thank you guys for covering that a bit. And I think that kind of speaking about security, one of the easiest ways that people are getting exposure to the entire industry is through stable coins. I think due to their low risk in nature. So what do you guys think is the role of stable coins in the future? And are there any specific stable coins that you guys like? Like, I think people don't understand the differences between all these stable coins.
Yeah, Robert.
I'm a bit biased given that Liquity is a stable coin. So yeah, I guess that there are multiple types of stable coins, and they have all their own fields or use cases. I guess there is a difference between creating a stable coin that's really useful for everyday payments and yeah, just to become a means of payment, then you need much more than just an economically sound mechanism that makes sure that it stays stable, but you also need some good integrations with like merchants and with like parties that accept your stablecoin as a means of payment. That's not what we are like primarily pursuing at Liquity, because that's something maybe Facebook can do, or very few companies could achieve that. Like, nobody has really issued a stablecoin today that has achieved this position of becoming like an everyday means of payment. But then on the other hand, I think just creating something which is stable and can be used as a base currency inside the DeFi spaces could already be an achievement. And that's what we are focusing on, aside from the fact that we are trying to make borrowing attractive. And I think that's an easier thing, I mean, to achieve. And there, I mean, we have the usual contenders. There is DAI, of course, which is decentralized to some degree, maybe not as decentralized as LUSD for several reasons. And then, yeah, you have the SUSD, and like there are not that many like really decentralized stablecoins out there. And yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to shill anything, or yeah, I mean, they have different use cases, and people will choose whichever stablecoin they like to use for a specific purpose.
So we obviously need a stablecoin for a local community currency and payments, but I want to this is such a fun space. I live in two worlds, right? One world, the time axis is measured in block numbers, right? So what's the block number? What's the block number? What's the block number? And the y-axis is measured in ETH, right? So it's like, that's sort of the world that I live in. And in this other world where the community currency operates in, the time axis is measured in times and seconds and days and years and all that good stuff. And the y-axis is measured in dollars, right? So you need to have you need to be able to translate between these worlds. And I know that my customer lives in that other world. So we need to have a stable coin to operate on that. And we also need to have, virtually zero gas costs, because you can't pay $2 for a cup of coffee and pay, $50 in gas costs to do that, right? That's just a dead on arrival. It's not going to work for us. So, we're excited to work with the Tellor guys to get the Chorus stuff implemented, but we're looking at all of the side chains that we can find. And actually, I mean, if we had to pick kind of a stable coin, the one that we're sort of leveraging now is XDAI, which is the sort of, proof of authority version of the DAI network, because it has low gas costs, but it's also, wonderfully decentralized stable coin. But, we're certainly open to kind of exploring a lot of other options at this point. So.
Yeah, I think on, stable coins, like it's still super early in, but we can all just be honest, like the biggest stable coins right now are like just super centralized. Like they're Tether and USDC, like it's just basically a digital dollar in a bank account, and you trust somebody that dollar's there. These aren't technical achievements in any way, shape, or form, but it's really what's getting a lot of the traction. And I think there will always be kind of a role for those, just because kind of like you can have just 100% collateralization on those. You can probably, as Tether has shown, you can even have under 100% collateralization on those, and the stablecoin still works. So it's really attractive to a lot of people to do that. And now you have a digital dollar. I think as kind of regulations start to kick in, we're going to see really the need for censorship-resistant dollars to come up. And in my mind, that's what Liquity or Maker or any of these other algorithmic stablecoins are trying to do, or it's the role that they're trying to fulfill, is like, okay, well, first we need something that's censorship resistant, because honestly, if it's not censorship resistant, like what are we even doing? You can just go use, a digital bank, go use PayPal or something like that. So you need it to be censorship resistant. And then from there, now we can figure out how we can actually use it and move along with, the rest of the world. So that's kind of where we're at in the moment with stable coins.
Yeah, it is highly centralized. You're definitely right about that. And I think it's still a new concept that's getting a lot of new people interested, because they can at least understand something that they've kind of used, which is similar to the dollar, at least in terms of value. But you guys are kind of on the obviously crypto insiders inside the industry. What are some metrics of success that you guys always have in your mind when you're looking at things? Because some of them are completely different than what we view as successful in the traditional world, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously, like for Tellor, there's metrics on your protocol, like how many, miners do we have? How many people requesting data do we have? Like, it's, it's not really directly comparable to any other protocol. You just have to like, see how we're doing over time. I think like, honestly, the biggest thing that for us that we try and do is, we try and grow kind of like we were talking about with governance. And whenever you talk about like, what's your actual impact going to be, it's how many people can you get to actually care about your protocol? And, like if you have people investing time and energy, and then you're going to succeed over time. So it's just, you can grow the market cap, or you can grow the, one person putting in a bunch of coins in your protocol or something like that. But it's how many people can you get to care about it? How many sort of touch points can you have, and just become kind of a part of the industry.
I really like that, like how many people care about your protocol. And I would also maybe add how many people use your protocol in a useful way, because now what I see nowadays is that many protocols, I mean, including ourselves, I must admit, like need to use some kind of extra benefit or early adopter incentive program to make their system attractive to users. Like there is a very fierce competition when it comes to the yield that you need to offer to even attract users. That was maybe different a year ago or 1.5 years ago in the early phases of the DeFi space. But now you really need to offer something on top of the base use case, which may sometimes like distract you from the real underlying use case that you want to fulfill, or the real purpose that you want to pursue with your application. And yeah, it's not just about the numbers, the TVL and the market cap. It's also about how many users actually use your system in a way that will make them stick to your system, that they're really like loyal to your system, and they wouldn't just change if another one pops up which offers a higher yield.
Yeah, so I agree with the sentiment, and certainly the more communities that adopt our specific implementation of a digital currency are the better. But I like to take a little bit more of a meta approach to this question, which is I kind of want to educate, and educate may be the wrong word, translate the crypto ease into kind of normal business language and normal human language. So my pet peeves are, well, I already mentioned trustless, but I also have a pet peeve in DAO, which I think we should just call electronic boardrooms, and just kind of leave it at that. And NFTs, like what the hell is an NFT? Like, why do we even use that phrase? We should call it a unique digital asset. And then people will be like, oh, okay, I guess it's a unique digital asset. Like that's all you have to say. You don't have to say NFT and then let me explain 20 minutes what the heck an NFT is. So I think that for me, the metric is going to be not people saying, oh, Bitcoin, isn't that thing that's going through the roof? Or isn't that thing that the price is going up on? But like actually understanding a lot more of the kind of electronic governance and the ability to kind of transact digitally, and kind of the security of the overall system, and how it's fundamentally different from kind of the way things are today. That's what I'm hopeful for. And yes, that's probably the long game. That's going to take a lot longer, which is why one of the reasons why I teach some classes. But that's kind of what I'd like to see a lot more of, is people kind of really understanding how this can be transformational.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And kind of going a little bit deeper into that, or kind of looking into the future, what do you guys think when will the intersection between, I guess, traditional finance and maybe even decentralized finance occur? Or do you guys think it will be just heavily retail driven? Do you guys kind of see any institutions or large organizations kind of taking their power and maybe the money they have and moving it into a decentralized finance system, or will they always be separate?
I mean, for me, I think they're always going to be separate. You're going to have, I kind of like I was saying about the music earlier. It's, we're just going to be the check on traditional finance and traditional governance and everything like that. Where if you don't have options that sort of you like, you'll come use us. There doesn't necessarily need to be a decentralized Facebook, but if Facebook knows there's a decentralized Facebook, then maybe they'll start behaving and not exploiting their users' data or something like that. And in the same way with DeFi, we can, if yields are so great in DeFi and you can put your savings into a 5% yield in DeFi, now it's going to force traditional companies to pay you some yield on your money. And I think that over time, that would be a success metric, is whenever we're as a space, forcing these companies to do something that they don't want to do or wouldn't do otherwise. So.
I think another issue here is really also the regulatory landscape, which may currently not be applicable to DeFi, but is certainly applicable to CeFi or to centralized providers of financial services. And yeah, I mean, just looking at the current tendencies, I mean, this may change in the future, or at least countries may try to somehow subject DeFi protocols to the same rules as are currently already applicable to centralized institutions. Yeah, I guess that could have interesting effects on how protocols will be designed. I mean, I don't hope that this will become reality, but there is a chance. And yeah, I mean, either decentralized protocols will need to add some centralized elements to fulfill the law, or they need to become anonymous. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, the risks would be too high. Or there could be some, I mean, this could also lead to some kind of CDFI partnerships, where you have gatekeepers or gateways which are somewhat centralized, and then everything else that happens behind, or yeah, this gate would then be maybe fine because it's transparent and everybody can see the trace transactions, but maybe there needs to be such a centralized gatekeeper, at least when it comes to fiat and crypto transfers or conversions. Yeah, it's difficult to see how the future will evolve, because I think it will heavily depend on the regulatory framework.
Okay, I completely disagree. Isn't this what you wanted? So programmable money is just so much better than the old system. I mean, you got it instantly global. You got it you can tell it to do whatever you want it to do. It's just so much better. And the $100 trillion that are locked in Wall Street is going global, and it's gonna happen. And DeFi is gonna take over the planet. So let me just completely disagree with Nick on that point. I think it's not going to be a separate system. It's just going to blow it out the doors. So we're only in the beginning innings of this long, 80 inning game we've got going on here. I think it's going to be tremendous, and there's going to be a lot of fights and a lot of battles. Don't get me wrong; it's not like a linear thing. It's going to be like this, So not like all of a sudden everybody's going to win tomorrow. There's going to be a lot of battles between now and the end game. So,
sure.
What do you say, Nick? You're just going to say sure?
No, I mean, it's you can always say that, with the long run, it's the dollar. That's people who call the dollar is going to collapse. Well, yeah, of course it will in the next 1,000 years, but timing matters. So.
Yeah, in the next trillion years, when the Earth explodes because of some celestial event that happens, the dollar will collapse then.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, every day in the industry is sort of a fight against, I guess, centralized finance. And I mean, I would just say the rate of innovation is amazing within our industry. It certainly beats a lot of the old players using technology that's widespread. And I think there's also a lot of different parties involved in the ecosystem as well. I would say it comes in different waves. There's a lot of speculators and really good traders in the market. But kind of looking forward, what do you guys think is, what kind of people do you think will get involved in this industry in the future? Will it be more people that are interested in the economic incentives? Or will people just use this technology because there isn't anything better out there? The alternatives start to get really bad.
I guess the most ideal outcome would be that people would use this technology without even being aware of using a blockchain or whatever technology they are using, because it's all about the user experience, and people wouldn't even necessarily have to be aware of how the underlying system works. I mean, that's hard. I think for the time being, that's obviously not the case. I mean, you need a lot of technical insights, or at least some knowledge about like installing your browser add-ons and whatnot to just set up a wallet. And yeah, I mean, it's just like not as obvious for maybe everyday users, but I hope that this will change over time. And I think there are a few interesting projects that are trying to go in that direction and make it just easier for users so that, yeah, I mean, you don't need any specific knowledge or, yeah, understanding.
Sure. Yeah, I think early on, like, you know, especially before there was a whole lot of money just kind of flowing around the space and VCs willing to fund projects, like the people who started building things were mainly philosophically driven to build these things. And that's where a lot of the value had kind of flowed now. But as more money comes in, you're building like each next person that comes in, you know, the marginal next person cares less and less about the philosophical implications of what we were originally trying to build. So you're slowly going to get less and less of these sort of value-driven projects, you know, where you really care about privacy or something like that. Like you'll have somebody who comes on, like, you know, like even like a Binance chain or something like that, and they care less and less about the decentralization aspect. So I think, you know, in 10 years, when, you know, most of the money will have come from projects that, let's say, in like the Binance chains of the world, or people that sort of compromised on that, you know, unless regulations put an end to it, we'll be building things kind of for the average users with just kind of blockchain technology a little bit on the back end stack. So.
Yeah. So I give talks to business students all the time, and I always ask the question, you know, how many of you have cryptocurrency? And usually in a room of about 30 to 35 people, 5 people will raise their hand and be like, you know, and a couple of them will be totally into it, but majority of them don't have any. They've certainly heard of it, but they just don't have a wallet. And that's a big question of how do you do the on-ramp? But there's almost always one student who will say, you know, and the 5 that are into it, 4 of them are like, yeah, I got my on-ramp, I got my Coinbase account, I got, you know, all the stuff that we all know. But usually one of them will say, I have some BAT tokens, right? Some Brave basic attention tokens from the Brave browser. And if you think about the on-ramp for that, it's simply downloading the browser and starting to surf, right? There's no like financial institution, there's no like exchanging of money, there's no complexity, right? It's like I just get online and do it. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that engagement. And when we get a lot more of that engagement where people could just simply spend time with apps or spend time on a thing and start to generate income and generate votes and kind of intellectual property, then you're going to see a lot more engagement in that. Because the whole idea of connecting my bank account with the crypto wallet is a little bit scary to kind of a majority of the people. I know in this community, in this conversation, everybody's deep into it, but you know, you go out into the rest of the world, into these communities that want a currency, and it's a little interesting. So that's one of the aspects we're looking at, kind of enhancing how a community currency can operate, is just by using it and interacting with it, you can generate some level of income. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's different ways to get involved in the industry, or I would say get exposed to crypto. And it wasn't like that a couple of years ago, where you kind of had to kind of just buy crypto, unless you were a miner. But there's a lot more ways for people to be inclusive now. But you know, I think a lot of people only talk about, I would say, just finance. Like we've seen the space been disrupted by finance a lot. Is there any other industry that you guys think, you know, looking forward to this year, that will just cross that path and kind of reach that level of disruption? Like to me, that path is like people don't go back and use those same like C5 models. So you guys have any like interesting projects that you guys are looking at right now, just in terms of disruption? Like what will people not go back to, so to speak, this year?
Yeah, maybe I'm again biased a bit because I used to work for Definity, the internet computer. They are now set or about to launch this Friday. And I mean, assuming that they fulfill like the goals that they set out themselves, I mean, that could be hugely disruptive. I mean, not only the platform itself, but what would be achievable on top of it. Like if you can imagine like building like a decentralized version of Facebook or Twitter, I mean, that's a whole different story than just having a DeFi application. And because it also like really boils down to like freedom of speech and censorship resistance, like also to like those platforms that, or those social media applications that currently wouldn't be achievable on Ethereum, for example. And yeah, I mean, if that happens, that could be hugely disruptive.
I don't have any specific projects that I'm watching, but I'm always ever hopeful that that the gaming sector will start to really kind of pick up, and you'll see a lot more. I mean, there's a ton of smaller projects, but I'm you know, the gaming is so naturally kind of, you know, should have some economic layers that kind of provide economic reward sort of in the crypto space. And I know there's a number of projects that are doing that, but it feels like the whole sector just kind of needs to embrace that. I know there's a bunch of gigantic players that are going to resist that, but so is it the next year, or is it, you know, in the long run? I'll have to use that phrase, but that's a sector that I'm interested in seeing move over wholeheartedly.
Yeah, for me, I guess it's like sort of related to finance. I think a lot of legal structures are going to change because of this. You know, like I'm super bullish on DAOs, or electronic boardrooms, and but the general idea, like it just, the idea of this, the old ideas of equity and LLCs and the incentives built into them, it's so, you know, 100 years ago. I think we can build way better models that help companies grow, and they help like us actually fulfill kind of the philosophical impact that we actually wanted to when we started these companies, not just sort of enriching some founders. So I'm super bullish on that.
Yeah, there's tons of different use cases still to be explored. I would say it's still very early stages, or like you guys kind of talked about, things like governance. People are still even learning that these things are even possible. To kind of end things off, you know, tell us all, what are the future updates we can expect from your projects in the months to come? And also, like, what is your #1 key advice for people looking to not just get more involved in the space, but I would say like to build something in the space?
Sure, I guess I can go first. Yeah, so Tellor will be announcing some new integrations, and we'll be announcing a lot more stuff coming soon. We'll be releasing hopefully details on what we hope to build with Tellor and with Chorus. If you guys want to get involved in the space a bit more, go to a hackathon. It's definitely my biggest advice. Like go try and build something. Either try and build something, or if you're not a builder like that, just go try and deposit some money into Liquity or something like that, and try and actually use something. Like go buy something with a currency, and just get a feel for it.
Yeah, maybe I can take it from there. So given that we launched Liquity like a month ago, it's a bit too early to have like very concrete plans for, let's say, a second version, but I mean, we are looking into expanding the model, or this concept of interest-free borrowing, to not just one stable coin, but to basically borrowing any existing asset without paying an interest. So I mean, that's something we are now bullish on, and we are researching, but that's just currently in a very early stage.
Yeah, so for locally owned, we're planning on launching in the next few months, kind of a template of the currency, and then hopefully soon after that, launching our first implementation of that, with the idea that we'll have a governing body of a community that will launch the currency, and we'll have kind of a Genesis block event where they get together and vote on the currency, and then start using it and deploy it with merchants and with users in a local community. And I don't want to say which one yet, because I don't want to jinx it, but hopefully you'll pay attention, and we'll have some nice templates online for you to download and deploy or check out for your community if you want to engage with the process. So, and I guess I would just echo Nick's comment about hackathons. You know, initially I was always skeptical about, you know, hackathons sound so, you know, hacky, right? Like, why would I want to go to a fancy conference if I want to learn about this? But hackathons are really where the sort of everything happens, right? The deep intellectual thoughts and the implementation happens all in the same location. And I think that's just fantastic, because you get that, you can see the whole spectrum of all the activity happening within the sector. So I agree with Nick in that area.
Yeah, or listen to like a Reimagine podcast. Those are
absolutely.
Yep, for sure. Thank you all so much for being here today. Really love all the ideas we covered today as far as participation and governance, and really getting deeper insights from you all, because you guys are the ones that are building the future infrastructure for the industry. So to anyone listening to this, definitely take their advice and check out all their protocols and really participate in them, because that's how you can continue to learn. It was great hearing from you all today, and I'm excited to see all of your updates. It was great having you all here today. Thanks.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
And special thanks to Tellor again. And on that note, I'll let you all, if you guys are listening to this right now, we were bringing you more interviews, more deeper coverage in the space every month. I'll let you all tune back into Reimagine 2021 version 8. Thank you.